All Things Data podcast. In the spirit of Daniel Kahneman, Peter Diamandis, and Google Moonshots, brings together leading data scientists, technologists, business model experts, and futurists to discuss how to utilize, harness, and deploy data science and data-driven strategies to enable digital transformation. The hosts are Dr. Manjeet Rege, Associate Professor of Data Science, and Dan Yarmala, Director of Business Development of IoT and Data Science. The podcast is produced by the Graduate Programs of Software of the University of St. Thomas in St. Paul, Minnesota.
I think you're touching on an important point, because the way I've kind of viewed things was, okay, we have to know the right business question to generate value. In that case, that's driving the exploration in the data science. But you're right, there's this yin and the yang, where the business or the value question, whatever it may be, if it's of social value, has to push forward to set the major hypothesis, let's say, and then the science is moving forward to answer some of those questions and back it up. But if this data science comes back, as you're saying, that is interesting anomalies, the executive has to be able to listen and embrace that nuance, and then that might lead to new business models, as we know, as what we call digital transformation, right? So it suggests that data scientists are going to have to become more business-minded, and business people and executives are going to have to become more analytical. What's your thoughts on that? Are you seeing that out in the marketplace, or are you encouraging that?
Yes, that's sort of the concept of this book, The Mathematical Corporation, and that is it sort of is from front office to back office, from the top level down to the lower levels of the business hierarchy. That everyone should be empowered to think about what are the signals in our business. What are the sort of the pieces of digital information that inform and improve or worry us about our business behaviors, operations, and sales, and so forth. And so everyone should be sort of empowered to raise a question when they see that there's something that should be questioned. And I'm not just talking sort of a general cultural sense of raising questions when you should have. I mean, just from an analytics sense, that if you see a pattern in the data that wasn't there before, then the whole organization should be empowered to deal with that. So one example of this, I heard of a business in Europe. Okay, so there's this airline called Transavia. Now, I never heard of Transavia before. I was at a conference, and the speaker, the keynote speaker, was the president of this airline, Transavia, from the Netherlands. And this conference was in the States. So he asked the audience, it's a huge audience of thousands of people, how many of you have ever heard of Transavia? And practically nobody in the audience raised their hand. No one had ever heard of this company before. I never heard of this company before. And he said if he asked that same exact question in a European conference with a European audience, 100% of the hands would go up. And the reason is that Transavia is sort of the equivalent of Southwest Airlines in Europe. And so everybody in the United States knows Southwest. It's the economy, low price, low cost airline with pretty good customer service. I mean, it's well known in the airline industry. I mean, they have the least complaints and the most favorable ratings, and yet they're one of the least expensive. And Transavia does that in Europe. And so we talked about how they basically no longer have front office and back office. It's sort of like everything is blended. That is, the people who are running the databases and the person who's on the customer service call, both are empowered if they see some trend or interesting thing in a particular consumer's data or information that might be useful in a way to improve that customer's experience when they're flying, then they can take the action. And so he gave the example of a lady was had made an airline reservation, and she was traveling with her daughter. And because when you travel, of course, you have to put your birth date into the system. Sort of the back-end database person, for whatever reason, who was just compiling the data, the spreadsheet of all the people who were going to be on a particular flight or something of that nature. They realized that they were actually flying on the young girl's birthday. And so they contacted the flight attendant and the flight crew and said, this young girl's birthday is going to be on your plane today. And so they actually bought a small cake and brought the small cake on the plane and had a happy birthday celebration on the plane for this young girl. And you can imagine, I mean, they got enormous positive social branding that day, all over social media in Europe. People were talking about, wow, look what Transavia did. And they had pictures and all this positive sentiment and real positive branding. You never know what small things you do will delight people in a way that will change their perspective and their loyalty towards your business.
You wrote an article, Kirk, which kind of reinforces all of this. That is, you might have humongous amount of data and you might do a tremendous amount of work applying machine learning, AI, and all of that. At the end of the day, if it is not bringing you value, if it is not helping your customer, if it is not improving the overall customer experience journey, then all of that means nothing. Right. So I'm referring to your article, the 5 key attributes of the best in-class customer experience that you wrote.
Yes.
Can you discuss what those attributes are for our listeners?
I'm going to have to try to remember them all. So again, customer experience is again a specific example of what we now call the experience economy. Okay, that there's a lot of sort of economic opportunity for businesses if they improve their consumer experience, if they're they have an online store or online presence, improve digital experience, or even user experience. It's healthcare, patient experience, and if it's your own employees and human resources, it's employee experience. So again, when we talk about customers and consumers in this case, we're talking about a very general kind of set of things that are happening in terms of working with people in the real world. Okay, so among these things are again some automation. So automation is one of the aspects of a key attribute, and because again you can't deliver this type of service manually. Okay, so even though the case of the young girl with the cake on the airplane, that was a one-on-one experience, but it was discovered when the larger database was explored and this coincidence of birth date and flight date was found. And so the more you can automate these processes, and recommender engines are again an example of this, where you basically can do that personalized recommendation. So that's an example of a key attribute, as much as you can automate this. So another one also is really where it all starts, is measurement, and that is you have to be able to track and measure these digital signals in order to act upon them, and that's pretty obvious. But I think what people sort of forget when they talk about big data, and that there's a lot of hype around that phrase, big data, and what that people miss about it is actually what it represents. What it represents is that we are now measuring and tracking just about everything in the world nowadays. Didn't used to be true, but now through our phone apps and all kinds of other digital experiences, businesses have bigger insight into your behaviors and interests than ever before. And so businesses have to measure, track, these particular types of digital experiences that their consumers are having. Another attribute of this is basically optimization, knowing sort of how to turn this thing into a delightful experience and not the sort of this crossing the line to way too personal type of experience. And so the optimization, so just like in mathematics, if you think about an optimization function, trying to find the extremum of a function. I mean, if you go past the maximum, then you're going downhill.
Yeah, just
right?
like an overfit, underfit, right? I mean,
yeah. So you can basically overfit. That is, you can think, oh, this person will be really happy if I do this, and this. Whereas they might only really need the first one, And so optimization is basically understanding the right time, the right place, and the right context, and then delivering based upon that, and not overthinking it or overfitting it. I think another example of sort of a key attribute is what I like to call a learning system. And so the learning system is really how you sort of build your back-end infrastructure, if you will, to capture the information, to build predictive models from that, which again is using machine learning. And so it's not just a machine learning system, it's a learning system. It learns how to improve everyone's experience, including the individual's experience. As I know in healthcare, they talk about learning health systems. And what learning health systems entail is not just looking at an individual patient's electronic health record, but looking at the whole population of people, health records, and how are they responding to different treatments or to different drug prescriptions or to give particular diagnoses, and improving the overall healthcare system and overall diagnosis and treatment systems and clinical practices based upon all the data from all of the population. And so it's a learning system. It's, again, front office to back office. Everybody involved is at making the system better. And I think the only one I left out of the top 5 key attributes was engagement, and I think we've talked about that quite a bit, is how do you know the right offer at the right time or the right experience, like delivering the cake to the girl on the airplane, delivering the right experience at the right time. That engagement is golden.
I was looking at some of the recent work that you have done, and I was personally really interested in the Data Science for Social Good competition, the Data Science Bowl. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because, all of this that we've been talking about is basically for business value, but there are very few people out there who are doing data mining, machine learning for the social good. So I think that's a great cause, if you could speak a little bit about that.
Yeah. So in fact, it's a worldwide phenomenon. And so maybe not too many businesses are sort of touting this, even though there are more and more that are doing this. Like my business has been doing it for many years at Booz Allen Hamilton. But worldwide, there's communities of several 100,000 data scientists, many of whom contribute to the social good hackathons and online events. So about, like say 3 years ago, the data scientists at Booz Allen Hamilton, before I actually started working here, so I give them all the credit. I was just the beneficiary of their work. They thought about it for a while and realized that data science is sort of an absolute and sort of necessity, a key literacy for the future workforce. And so students across the age groups and not just in college and graduate school, but even before that, should sort of see the value and the benefit and the pleasure of doing this stuff. And so they said, gee, if there's we have spelling bee and geography bee, we have these competitions where are on television, and the young kids get prizes for spelling words correctly or knowing places on a map. Why don't we have a competition that rewards people for doing good data science? But not only that, let's tie it to a social cause. And so the Data Science Bowl started 3 years ago, and it ran until the spring of 2015, and there was a $200,000 prize offered by my company, Booz Allen Hamilton. Actually, the first year, $175,000 prize. So it was a collection of prizes: first place, second place, third place, but first place got the most. And it was around ocean health, analyzing hundreds of thousands of ocean images for plankton, and so classifying different plankton species in the ocean. And it turns out plankton is a major processor of carbon dioxide from our atmosphere and converting that back into oxygen. So that's important for our climate, but also it's a key food source for indigenous populations, and also it's a key ingredient in a lot of sort of medicinals. The health of the oceans is a real sort of indicator of the health of the entire planet. So we ran this competition, and quite a few thousands of people participated. It was very successful. We ran it again the next year on heart health, identifying early signals of heart disease. And there was a $200,000 prize purse. So again, a first prize, second prize, third place. They got different amounts, with first place getting the most. Again, tens of thousands of submissions, several thousand participants from all over the world. So data scientists who are really willing to give their own time to, so granted there was prize at the end, but there were only like the top 10 people out of the many tens of thousands of submissions got anything. All these people contributed their time, and we estimated something like $4 million of in-kind contribution. That is basically what people contributed if you actually had paid for that time to generate these models, which in fact are very accurate models for predicting heart health. And it turns out the winning team that year were a couple of Wall Street quants, people with no medical experience at all. Well, that was the second of our third competitions, and it was so successful that now we at Booz Allen have different foundations beating a path to our door saying we want to be part of this. We want to contribute to social good through data science and machine learning. And so this year we ran our third competition, was just ended a few months ago, which is about early detection of lung cancer. And the Laura and John Arnold Foundation gave $1 million prize money. And so we had the largest participation ever. Again, I don't remember all the numbers, something like 18,000 different submissions from several thousand participants. Phenomenal results. I mean, improving the early detection from these low-dose CAT scans, which have very, very high false positive rate. So if you go to the doctor with this early detection, again, you want to have a low-dose scan because you don't want to be irradiating people, which will cause cancer. Right. But with the low-dose scan, it's really hard to detect the cancer. And so when they do see some kind of blur or blob in the image, 95% of the time it was a false positive. And so you really can't start operating on people when basically only 1 out of 20 people will actually have the cancer and 19 out of the 20 people don't. And so the algorithms this year actually improved upon that number. I mean, it hasn't completely reduced false positives, but it has improved so that there is a reduction in the false positive rate now. And so we're moving actually to clinical operational development deployment of this algorithm. And so that's the real exciting thing. This moved from just a science competition, like a spelling bee, to actually operationalizing it. Okay, we've been having fun in sort of the data science sandbox, the playground where we're testing and having fun with data exploration, but let's operationalize it. Let's monetize. So the same thing with the heart health detection algorithms from last year. The National Health Institutes are working towards operationalizing those algorithms into clinical practice so that these things actually start saving lives.
It kind of goes beyond just winning one competition, but with the National Institutes of Health taking that over, it can really be implemented and then applied to the larger population.
Right? Exactly. This is one example, but one of the big examples of why I left the university. I was a full professor, tenured professor at the university, and I left such a wonderful position to come to Booz Allen in 2015 because I saw the amazing investment, the amazing people, the amazing ideas, and their absolute commitment, to improving society through data science and machine learning. And it's not just an attribute of my company, but data scientists worldwide have the same sort of motivation. People often say, big data will change the world, will solve the world's problems. And okay, maybe that's overstating it, but the people who are practicing in this field, they truly in their hearts believe it. So even though we might fall short, people are not stopping trying. They're still trying to improve just about everything: food supply, food safety, human trafficking, drug trafficking, money laundering, fraud, cybersecurity, data breaches. All these things people are working towards solving because they believe what they're doing, and these machine learning algorithms can actually help. And so that's really the power. And it's the faith that the people have in their own talents and skills and their own humanity that I now have a tool in my hand that can actually help me to implement the things I care most about.
Well, there is that story of the Microsoft researcher. That man's son died of SIDS, and then he used machine learning to kind of look at some early detection of sudden infant death syndrome that was really palpable and really good. And what's interesting about what you guys were just talking about is that the people participating in this coming from a friendly competition or things like Kaggle or these data science marketplaces, we're finding, or I'm hearing incidences of like a glaciologist has a better approach than, say, the best data science actuarial on Wall Street or something. Different approaches, and friendly competitions where there's a passion is really producing, like you said, some very interesting results.
Yeah, that actually underscores one of my firm beliefs about data science. I heard someone say once that data science is multidisciplinary, and I objected to that. I said no, because I actually advised PhD graduate students who were doing finance and climate science, remote sensing and all kinds of different things, and that did not require me to become an expert in that field, nor did it require them in order to work with me for them to become astrophysicists like I am. Someone referred me to the phrase transdisciplinary. And it stuck. It said, yeah, that's it. It transcends discipline boundaries. It allows us from different disciplines to work together without having to learn each other's discipline and each other's language, because the language of data science, machine learning, discovery, algorithms, it transcends those boundaries. So that's why I can talk to you today, for example, about marketing or cybersecurity or patient journey, even though I'm not a specialist in any of those things, and a specialist would completely defeat me in an argument because of if it's about their discipline. But when we talk about using data and machine learning algorithms in a domain like that, we can all have the conversation. So when you consider that transdisciplinary nature, that means that people from completely different disciplines, different perspectives, different viewpoints, different skill sets can bring that collection of perspectives and skills to solve a hard problem. You may end up with a case like the Wall Street quant, coming up with the best heart disease detection algorithm than even the cardiologists of the world. There's signal and patterns in the data that we've been missing all this time, and that same is true in my field, astronomy. We're using algorithms now to find signals and patterns in data that even traditional expert astronomers have missed. So there's something more there that a person who's trained in algorithms to tease out those signals and patterns has a good chance of contributing.
Kirk, we began this fascinating conversation asking you about your journey. Now that we come to an end of this conversation, I would like to ask you about people listening to this who are interested in embarking on a data science journey. How would you advise them, and what are the steps to take? One is a kind of a student perhaps who is graduating out of a undergraduate program, and then there are other students out there whom I teach who have probably worked in the industry already for 15, 20 years and would like to now make a transition into the field of data science. What would you advise them?
Well, I always start off by telling people to follow their passion. And by that I mean, because data science and machine learning are transdisciplinary, if your passion is healthcare, if your passion is finance, if your passion is astrophysics, if your passion is whatever, you can still follow that passion and do this new cool stuff called data science and machine learning. So don't abandon what you've already feel your strengths and passions are. But unless you choose to go off in some different direction. But don't underestimate the power of what you already have within you and what you've already learned, because every discipline and every business and every organization and every aspect of life now has data, digital information in some way associated with it. And so by learning the skills of machine learning and data science, you can now apply greater power tools, if you will, to that discipline. So first, know what your passion is and follow that. The second thing I would say is understanding sort of your place already in your education journey. So if you're early in education, don't stop your education to suddenly take a couple courses in data science and then walk away from your education. But then people come back to me and say, well, does this mean that I shouldn't get like an advanced degree before I get a job? And I say, no, what it means is first, make sure you got the foundational stuff. You can always come back to the advanced degree later. So the job can come before the advanced degree, but oftentimes the advanced degree will ultimately lead to greater opportunities down the road in your future career. For example, let's say you have a degree in physics, you can go take some data science training either through boot camps or online courses or even some university courses and get a data science job. But going back for an advanced degree like maybe an MBA, that'd be really valuable future in life, or a master's in analytics, that'll be really valuable future life. So there's places you can sort of intercept the data science career path no matter where you are. If you're already a PhD, and there are lots of people who are already PhDs, and especially in some of the science disciplines who are finding it hard to get jobs in the sciences because it's always kind of tough anyway. There's actually fellowship programs that exist in the country where people could do like maybe a 3-month or a 4-month boot camp where since they already have a lot of hard scientific skill. They don't need to be trained in say, computational techniques. They already do that. They can basically learn the tools of the trade of data science and machine learning, which will now just build upon their existing aptitudes and skills and talents as a scientist that they already have. And so, in a sense, within a few months, they can be ready for, data science prime time, if you will. So there's opportunity just about everywhere. And in case I'm shortchanging the younger people, I just saw this thing on YouTube called this kid. They called him the Artificial Intelligence Super Kid. You can look him up on YouTube. He's 13 years old, and he's already programming machine learning algorithms and robots and doing all kinds of amazing stuff at a very young age. Now, I wouldn't, if I was that kid's parent, I wouldn't encourage him to stop his education now. He definitely needs to complete his education, but still follow that passion.
Well, thank you
very much, Dr. Borne, for speaking with us. You were listening to the All Things Data podcast. My name is Manjeet Rege from the University of St. Thomas, and this show is being hosted by myself and Dan Yarmuluk.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kirk.